Good morning, dear everyone who's present in the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center and our press center and those who are watching us. I would say very briefly that we continue the geopolitical dialogues, and I'm very glad, actually, that we have the opportunity today to listen, to ask questions to a person who is maximally suitable for geopolitical dialogues, and I'm very glad that even in spite of the fact that Yuriy Mykolaievich is not for a long time in Kyiv, here just a few days, but we have the opportunity to talk about the things that are disturbing many people, both in Ukraine and abroad. We've got English stream, English translation, interpretation of our discussion. I hope that it will be interesting not only in Ukraine, but also in many countries abroad. I don't think that we need to present you. However, for external audience, I would like to mention why are we addressing you. It's not that much because you are well known in Ukraine, politician, and all your ex-jobs in ministry and in the party, in the political party. I won't mention all of that here. However, what is very important in this context is that you are also professional doctor, epidemiologist, because COVID crisis and everything, we will talk about that as well. But for me, most important is the fact that you are the person who is in the external policy of Ukraine, and you were directly involved to the first actions on our key issues, some basics of our foreign policy, and then being the ambassador in 4 countries, which indeed is a very huge achievement of not just thinking, but also acting. It's not many people can combine deep theoretical knowledge with certain actions. And embassy is not easy. Israel, we all hear about that quite a lot right now. The USA and Mexico, which is also, like, we hear very often about the border, Canada and Mexico. Canada, also very important for Ukraine. So as a matter of fact, your involvement, that is years and years, 12, 15 years of professional activity, of the work of an ambassador, representative of the country. And now in these spots, we have a lot of interest. Near East, USA is interesting for us as a partner and also advisor of the president on foreign policy with bigger coverage of that region. Today, I would like us to speak about a lot of things. I want to talk about a lot of things. However, I would like to make very non-traditional approach, and I think very proper approach from the point of view of those who are watching us. Let us begin from the end, so to say. I would like to ask, how do you see the development, global development, brief term, maybe in middle term perspective? Because it's hard to take a look at what is behind the horizon. What will happen to the world in the nearest time? What scenario do you see in the world development for the nearest period? I would like to start with this. So please tell your opinion. Dear Mr. Valeriy Alexeyevich, dear colleagues, it's a big honor for me to be here today. And honestly speaking, I saw Kyiv just today thanks to Valeriy Alexeyevich because I had some sickness. However, I still felt that I am in my native city. And I would like to add to the things mentioned by Mr. Valeriy that for 1.5 years of absence, I've been living and working in Poland. And we created their independent media forum, Ukrainian and Polish internet platform, where a lot of materials we printed out. In particular, we were cooperating with the management party, PiS, who have lost the elections. However, we printed out like 300 materials about Poland, taking into account that in Ukraine, people don't know much the realities of Polish politics. And Poland can be involved to some extent to the number of the countries that, like Israel, where the war is going on, the USA, where there are some quarrels, and Poland. Poland is also divided, and a lot of time can be spent, like every day, being here in Kyiv. I watch Polish television, and there's a lot of interesting and new things. However, if we are talking about the future, I will use the American military terminology. They divide future and things and future after. So the future they consider is a thing. This is a military approach. 10 years. What will happen in 10 years when they are planning types of weapons? They imagine what might happen, what kinds of weapons, what will be the methods of having the war, and so on and so forth. What they can provision for 10 years. Then it's the zone of darkness, future after, okay? When there are incredible new solutions, new technological approaches, new types of weapons, and it's very hard already to operate some rational methods of predicting the events. So if we are talking about such midterm period, let us call it this way, 10 years, I predict that we are coming closer to the Third World War. And I made up such a formula. Maybe you won't like that. However, it is called that we, Ukraine, today are in the epicenter of the global war, where approximately 140 states are involved due to war which is going on our fields. And of course, this war is the beginning. It's not even the beginning, it's the continuation of the process of moving towards the Third World War. I studied the history of the First and the Second World War, and very interesting that in 2013 people didn't understand that they are coming closer to some scary, horrible event in the history of humanity. They didn't think that such war will take place. However, if we study that in retrospect, the history of the First World War, we see how some unions inevitably were created and local wars prepared all the ground for the First World War. And at the end, it happened. The same things happen today. Because let us say so, the Second World War, of course, it started not the 1st September of 1939 in Poland, but it started approximately when Japan attacked China. That was the first part from the Pacific Ocean, somewhere over there. Then the war in Spain, then later on, all the well-known processes. Meaning, this is a series of events, a range of events that seem, important to people. However, people don't believe, they don't want to believe that scary events are approaching. So, Poland, it's close to my heart, and it's just a wonderful reading of texts of summer and autumn 1939. I have photos and the Polish newspapers, what they printed. Everyone knows that the war is coming, and nobody believes that the war will happen. And this is kind of a human paradox, the person doesn't want to believe that the death is coming closer and some suffering is coming. An amazing photo in the center of Warsaw at the time, there was a huge swimming pool and hundreds of young people who were swimming in the pool, they were sunbathing, and so on. I'm not even mentioning that people were on the coast in the region of Gdańsk and Gdynia, where the formal war started, and they saw the attack of Germany from there. So that's a process, and I think that this process is going on right now. According to the documents, of course, the Americans, let us say, they have a range of very important documents. They say that 2027/2030 as a year when they will be ready and when China will be ready. They were getting ready before the war started, Russian and Ukrainian. They were getting prepared, and now they're getting prepared to the conflict, the main conflict, even though they want to prevent this conflict. However, these are the terms that they are speaking about, approximately 2030. So people are divided into two blocks. I'm saying that as for the democracy powers, that is Ramstein, like 50 plus countries. In my opinion, there will be the global NATO that will be created. I've been saying about that for a long time on all kinds of international conferences back in 1990s, in 2000s, that NATO will not be in the format that as it exists right now. So just imagine they take Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and they already participate in NATO sessions, even in Vilnius. So that is the construction of global structures is happening as a preparation to the Third World War. And just like the so-called global south, they are being structured. Now they are trying to form with all the efforts, their military alliances, political alliances, getting ready to some challenges. Because the global challenge was made against the USA, against their, I would say, the leadership position, even though they are not the kind of the leaders they used to be. And a serious preparation is going on to what we see on the example of not just Russian and Ukrainian war, but very important and serious conflict in Israel that can also cover at least like 10 countries and is covering indirectly as of now. However, on the edge, I'm sorry, I will turn it up. Yeah, absolutely one of the scenarios, and maybe I wouldn't have listened to the Third World War if I wouldn't have read about you words you mentioned. This, like 10 years ago, you mentioned that this might happen. So I am listening to your words, and it sounds weird, I would agree that in cyberspace, there is already the world war, there are attacks and counterattacks on the global level. There are some things that we don't see. However, I dare say what I know for sure, that the USA, Iran, China, Russia, Northern Korea, Ukraine, they are already involved. I don't mention other countries. We are involved in the global war. So it is already going on in this space. We don't see this in other spaces as of now. In terms of the Navy, we see the dislocation. Everyone is trying out their power. And China, they can do nothing to two flagships of the USA that came to the Near East and zone of conflict. The only prediction when people are talking about Third World War, people don't really understand that, because in people's understanding who witnessed the Second World War, how it developed, of course, it's nothing similar to what we've got right now. So the things that you mentioned, it might happen, but then I read your books and you say that it's possible to avoid that. So where are we now if we compare with the historical moment, and indeed how can we get prepared, and at the same time, how can we avoid? Because these are two contradictory things. Because if the country is globally getting ready for that, however, why do then avoid this right now? Because it's a bit a paradox, you know? Okay, Valeriy Alexeyevich, in my opinion, I differ from many politologists with the fact that I have deep biological and medical education. And to my deep understanding, the wars in general, not always, maybe always, they do not depend on human will. It's like the volcano, you know? We are walking around the volcano, we are living there, and all of a sudden, there's the explosion and the volcano becomes active. We don't know why. There are biological issues. As microbiologist, I can tell you when you launch one microorganism to the good environment, they are getting like multiplied, the number of the population grows, then they come to the peak. And then the worst thoughts. They start destroying each other. And it's not something due to their will. Just the same about the wars. Well, it seems to us that we can make up some agreements, we can come to an agreement. However, there are some moments. Who could stop the First World War? Because it seems that it came out of nothing. Well, there was no such a reason to start the war immediately, you know, when there was some misunderstanding from the point of view of Russian Tsar. He didn't understand what Wilhelm is doing, or the King of England. So it was like global misunderstandings. However, the war started, and it did not depend on the will of one person. And the same is here. We should not think that we can manage all the processes. We don't. There are some processes that are managing us. And this is some kind of like in-depth, maybe the processes that were not studied till the end. I won't develop this topic because on a very deep level, it has to be examined. What is that all about? Because it seems to me that in addition to economical, political, social reasons of wars, we all know these reasons, like incompatible some provisions, or let us say so, some kind of a status, then it's not in line with the time that has changed, and so on and so forth. However, the main thing is that there is something else we cannot manage. We cannot understand what's that about. But the world is going like step by step, and it seems that everybody wants to stop that, but the world goes to this edge. And now, very brief mentioning, you mentioned the China. I can't agree with you fully. I recently read the article of American military specialist. Very interesting. He showed that American military forces are lagging behind from China. Why? He showed that China, in the last 10 years, were getting ready for the war in the ocean. And they have got the rocket which can kill the avia carrier. However, that will be incredible and scary dream for the Americans if the rocket that costs like $100 million will hit the ship that costs billions. And he showed different types. It was very interesting, like some ships that can carry machinery, and they said that American army is lagging behind from that. They are getting ready for the war in the ocean, and it will be different from the war that is going on our fields. I understand. The only thing that I can add to what you say is that indeed when they press the trigger, so to say, then there is a lot of things related to that. We don't know what is happening to our neighbor, so to say, or like what infections they have, even though it was like Near East or Asia. But however, the experts whom I know, they said that there were all the factors for that a few years ago already. And the question is very simple. Everybody wants to have the change of their power. I mean, the countries, new countries. Russia is speaking about that loudly. However, they lost this opportunity because they made a mistake by attacking Ukraine. It was a huge mistake because Putin, he involved Russia and he got it there to the other way around. However, some politicians or the forces, they wanted to redivide the world differently in terms of geopolitics and so on. And dozens of years ago, there were a lot of crises and a lot of local conflicts, wars. Vietnam, Korea, those were huge conflicts in the period when there was no global war. However, there were wars. So I am interested why, for you as a specialist in this field, I would like to ask. There was a huge crisis, COVID, and by the way, we still don't know whether it was done artificially, don't doubt, or it was went out of control. However, the huge crisis, it could have become, the solution of the crisis could have redistributed the powers. And this is what happened in business, because many companies lost their possibilities to develop, and some companies went really high. So money from one sector went to the other sector. And why earlier on this crisis, economic, financial, COVID, again, epidemiological situation was enough. And now it seems that it's lacking, not enough. And everybody is getting ready for the other thing. Can we make a step back with smaller losses, so to say, first of all, in terms of human lives? Well, this happened because all the mechanisms of holding back the military actions and sticking to peace, they came to an end. Fully, the building after Helsinki, it's destroyed. It fell. And now it does not correspond to the realities that are there in the world. All the mechanisms, all the institutions, post-war institutions of the World War II, they did not meet the reality that we have as of today. There's absolute redistribution of powers, and when earlier on there was a big seven, G7, who came together, they owned more than 50% of the VAT, global. Now, just calculate 30%. That is, they started losing the power that the America was owning. There was a huge rise after World War II. It had the world that was almost like mono world. Not, even the Soviet Union, it was a competitor. However, everyone knew that the USA and Western countries are more powerful. However, not now. Everything is in the past. Europe doesn't play that role, and they cannot play the role they used to play for thousands of years of history. Now, others came to the arena. In my opinion, we are coming back to the Middle Ages. I'm just bringing the example, and maybe that will be clear for you. This is TV series. How's that called? The War of Thrones. So this is describing the world today. This is full destruction of international rules, international behavior, standards, international standards, the world becomes chaotic. There's redistribution of powers. And there are countries that are just trying to pretend, usually those are aggressive countries that could ensure a certain level for their population. However, they demand already a share of the global power, and they are pretending to get that with all the things. And I just managed to find one of the tasks. It's not like I made that, but it's like the acts of evil. You know, it's analogy to the countries like Germany, Japan, and Italy, right? No, it was like the Reagan's words against the evil. Yeah, however, there is a metaphor, and also Bush repeated that, and they involve the countries that are mentioned in the USA, the countries who are sponsors of terrorism, Northern Korea, Syria. Yeah, however, it seemed to me that this act existed since before the Second World War, when Hitler made an agreement with Mussolini and with Tokyo. It doesn't matter, but now I would like you to pay attention to the fact that it's not the acts. It's like the territory of that. I even, want to make up a map. Russia, with its back, is connected to China. China to Korea. And Russia also with the Korea have joined boundaries, and also Iran. And it's very and very dangerous because this huge, massive, it can operate and operates huge resources. It's like the mainland of evil because they have joined boundaries, and it's something new. And this comes to Near East. And there, on the way, there's also Central Asia. And not accidentally, right now, the president of France, and before that, there were Americans. So the first meeting of Joseph Biden with the group, like 5 countries of Central Asia, because they are on this way. One more interesting moment, when Americans made alternative way from India, they set it up. It was very disturbing for China because it meant that it's not only this way that exists. So you mentioned that first. I never saw that somebody talks about the mainland. Yeah, it is in the book. Yeah, the book is a separate story. However, this is a weak voice, of one old person. You didn't present it yet. As soon as you present it, people will see. However, I would like to mention that among the experts who are abroad, nobody mentioned. Maybe I missed that. However, that it's just one and the same mainland. Yeah, and this is the hardline of Eurasia. What about Central Asia? Central Asia will fall. And Tajikistan and Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, they will be owned by China. However, I don't know, maybe you saw, there is such a theory that the events in Israel, the war that started right now, we don't know how it will end, what will be the result. This is related to the fact that it was the alternative way for India to Europe. At the time when, for China, this way was not good, wasn't beneficial. We don't know the whole truth. Maybe this factor also plays a certain role. However, no doubt that involvement of Israel and Arabic countries that are neighboring and Iran, this is one of the strategical geopolitical successes of Putin. That's his idea, to open the second front line, to distract from Ukrainian and Russian war. And this is a very serious and new factor. Just take a look. All the attention of the press and Americans is on the Israel. And then there is also like the drama, and their hands are tied. And Blinken now is meeting with now sitting in Jerusalem in the military cabinet of Israeli, and he is telling them to stop attacks to Gaza. How can they do it if it says that they are suppressing the spots of terrorism because they didn't go deeply inside to have another war? So another question, you see the possibility of growth to Arabic and Israeli conflict. Hamas is holding on today at 3. There had to be a speech of the leader of Hezbollah, and he had to make some very important claim for 2 days that had been advertised yesterday and today by Israeli media. I don't think that he will speak about the war. However, some new warnings and threats will be there for sure. And this all holds on the will of Iran. And now there are discussions because Americans didn't just say that they are ready to just do something for Iran so that they don't get involved with the war. Because the aim of American diplomacy, with all the efforts to stop going to the full-scale war that they are trying to blow up. We don't know about Saudi Arabia when the rockets are flying 1,600 kilometers the distance. They are flying over the heads of Saudis. It's not really pleasant for Saudi Arabia. So there's a whole mixture of conflict situations that might explode anytime. We don't know on the edge of what we are right now. We don't know how to stop that because you mentioned properly, Israel doesn't have to stop. Let us try to imagine ourselves in the shoes of Israeli commanders. They came to Gaza. They started these attacking the tunnels and so on, and then the person comes and stop. We need to provide some support to population. Yeah, but Israel, you wanted to stop the war. They gave 1 day to make the results. Actually, Israeli is very careful now. That is, Americans mentioned that they cannot, Israeli has a right for self-defense. By the way, Russians are just in their style, how they usually say that they had no right for self-defense. Yeah, and Benzi, philosopher, you know that Putin is calling him Benza. Okay? Publicly, on the meeting of ambassadors, he said, why not Benzin is there? So this is the attitude to these people. Out of this, you mentioned very interesting issues. Let's take this hypothesis. You mentioned your theory that China, it was not dangerous, but they didn't want Saudi Arabia to be close with Israel because everybody recognizes more or less Israel is a country, and Iran also, and China. You say about China because the combination. So for China, this turbulence is okay for their goals. Okay. Now, for the USA, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for us neither. Even though out of pragmatic interest, we want this conflict to be stopped right now. However, we cannot say that to Israeli because we went through this and there should be the right for self-defense. So the question, leaders, China and the USA will meet each other, and if we take into account these interests, it turns out that China, when we are talking about trade, they won't trade with this region. So maybe in this situation, they will agree to a more active role of China in keeping Russia back, or it's not like the help, but because they are supporting them with their silent agreement. It's not about that, but when there are global negotiations, and you mentioned properly, they are not ready yet. USA are still quite powerful country, and I personally hope that, like, the fact that the China will achieve all the goals, I don't believe that, because economic crisis right now showed that there might be some steps backwards, and China is now interested in renewing their economic balance, and they need the USA. They're not ready to that. 2033 is their plan. However, they already said that they decided to redivide the world. Let us agree about the influence. For China, they don't care. Like, I agree that there won't be the Putin's world, like multipolar world. There will be a world without Russia. However, there will be some time until that happens. But this discussion about the division of the world, division of influence, they want to take this, the Pacific Ocean part, global south. Yeah, it's like very abstract, for me. But let us talk about their region, and also what you mentioned, it goes up to Near Eastern Africa. They want USA to give them a free place there, and the USA, please, in Western part, Europe, whatever. If there will be discussion in this tone, so maybe in this situation, China will reduce, like preventing us of going to NATO, and it's like Ukraine still goes to the western part of the world. Might it happen? I mean, such discussions, or it's too early to speak about that? I think that is too early. First of all, there is a theory that China might just fall apart. And this might be one of the absolutely shocking and unexpected things of the 21st century, because we are all used to the fact that China is already a global country and they almost pretend for half of the world, However, the situation is incredible there. They have big crisis and also demographic as well, because the biology plays huge role. Just imagine when they were forbidding to have more than 3 children. Do you remember at the times of Mao? And it happens so that it's always like that. There are more boys than girls, and they have a huge deficit of women and a lot of men. And this is a very scary thing, because they have a lot of young people who are looking for a partner for themselves. They cannot find a partner. So this is a huge tension from one side. And from the other side, it's a contradiction between the ocean part of China and the in-depth regions, where they have much smaller progress, and there are serious contradictions. That is, there are such theories that it might happen, like China's failure, but not in the nearest 10 years. No. However, let us think of what might happen. China is incredibly slow traditional empire. They are not just like Ukraine, for example, or some other countries who are trying to change their vectors. They are changing their vectors in 2 years or in 3 years. So China, of course, in my opinion, they will never refuse having alliance with Russia. And they want Russia to be like their subordinate, so to say. They will colonize calmly them by replacement of people. And Brzezinski mentioned me earlier on. He was very surprised, and it was very interesting opinion. He was in Russia somewhere in those regions near to China, and he said that, Yuri, you can't imagine what's happening there. Chinese man go there, Russian women are marrying them happily because they work hard, they don't drink as Russians. They create families, and step by step they are moving and moving. And China doesn't hurry. They don't need the 2 years to conquer Siberia. They will do that in 100 years. Why? Yeah. Why is it happening now? I mean, Xi Jinping mentioned that they want in 2027 to go to the level of military some conflict so that they can talk about conquering Taiwan in 2031. Then maybe they can compete with the USA. So why did they speed up the processes that economically and demographically they could have achieved? Anyways, two theories. The first one, this happens pretty often when internal instability is compensated by external war. So there is theory that Putin started war against Ukraine because he felt that his regime is not stable, and the war always unites people and is distracting them from internal problems. This is one theory. The second one is that it's his personal mistake and his personal behavior, his personal tragedy. Well, just like Putin, he wanted to be in the history and to speed up the process. However, obviously, the army that is gaining some powers, they feel their power, their strengths, and weapons. That's a very strong army. And maybe this is what is motivating him for conquering. And one more reason people don't speak much about that. Chips. Just Taiwan is producing chips that China doesn't produce. The best chips in the world are done by the USA, like of some incredible generation, and they are not sharing that with anyone. However, Taiwan is producing 80 or 70, I'm afraid to be mistaken, percentage of world chips that everything is holding on. Weapons, modern equipment, technical equipment, and China wants to have this base of production of these things. We will see how true it will become. It sounds actually weird because to conquer the base and then this base will just disappear in some time. And then, so USA are taking the production to their place. So in 10 years, the situation will be different. Ukraine has also to think where Ukraine can find its place. So where is the place of Ukraine in the scenario that you consider realistic? It's not like where is the place of Ukraine. We understand that now we are in the war, and it's not a regional war. However, I would probably call that regional, even though Ukraine is having the war against Russia. However, in this or other way, many countries are involved, and this makes the conflict not local but regional. And we don't see the involvement of NATO as of now or other countries. They want to avoid that. So I have two questions. First, whether we succeed in avoiding, the other countries of European region, would they be able to avoid the full involvement to war? And because at our cost, as of now, they are doing that, and they are helping us with weapons. However, the second question is how in this incredibly difficult system, and we can see that it still exists, even in your scenario, as far as I understand, for a few more years of this hard conflict. So what can we do under the conditions of this world conflict? I'd like to say that this is life important issue. So to say, I can say just that unfortunately, so we as the management of Ukraine, we are focusing on the problems of war, and all together We don't think about the future. We don't think about the Ukraine and the world. Being in Poland, I have the opportunity to observe, so to say, from the different perspective, the events that are happening here. So to be involved, feeling that I'm here, I would like to mention that when I came to Poland last year, I was amazed by the fact how more truth, hard truth, they were mentioning about the war when there was Russian attack. Polish generals, well-known generals, in the morning, they were standing near the maps in different Polish channels, and they were showing the maps, where are the fights, what is the attack, and so on. I was amazed because it was unclear from the things that we heard. And of course, I have the privilege. I remember 1941. Nobody understood anything in June and July 1941 about what is happening on the front line from the messages of the Information Bureau. And the same. Now it's the same. And Polish people, they have own important point of view. I would like to mention that in Poland, all the time they are discussing the future of both Poland and Ukraine. And they see the best, I guess, intellectual powers of Poland, only the union. And unfortunately, now we are on the worst stage of, our relationship is on the worst stage. At first it was euphoria, and all of a sudden it went down. I won't mention about that here right now. It's just some things. However, there is a project like 12 countries, you know perfectly, and Polish people all the time, they are promoting the idea of Rich Pospolita and the other similar Poland, Ukraine, Lithuania, part of Belarus, as they see it, and from Croatia to Estonia and to Finland. So they see this alliance, and I think that it might be a certain branch from NATO, because I don't think that NATO will be fully destroyed. However, the western part, Polish people are treating Poland with great mistrust. They have very bad relationship. And France, and that part of NATO, they are speaking about that directly. They are fighting for creating the bloc that would stand against Russia after the end of the war. That's what I'm mentioning. Yeah, what about, without the nuclear component? How is it possible? By the way, about nuclear component, we understand that last year, Putin was hit on his hands, how now we have in publications how they were, how our partners were reacting to nuclear blackmailing, so to say, and we all understand, and China is taking that into account, by the way, India, that now Russia has more rockets. Nobody knows how it flies because it's in Soviet times, and Russia didn't demonstrate anything. It was just Putin showed his case and so on. However, it's just the connection, but whether it can function or not, nobody knows. However, everybody understands that if, by the way, it was officially mentioned, Britain, Poland, and Ukraine, there was such an idea. Did it take place? No. Unfortunately, the people stopped talking about that, and one of the reasons that is mentioned in informal discussions, not to irritate NATO in general, because we plan to be in NATO. Because there will be a break of that. And as far as our membership is still considered, then we don't do that. However, if we won't be taken to NATO in Washington next year, we will have to decide something. Do you think they will invite us? We are working on that. However, I guess it's 20% of possibility only. Theoretically, it might happen. However, we need to get prepared, and We have to work on that. So the plan A, I guess, now is not the main for our authorities, and plan B, like the agreements and guarantees of safety, at least I see that people are publicly working on that. So maybe they are right that there is no readiness from the countries of NATO to accept us. However, if we won't be accepted in Washington, then we have to consider some other options. Your model is one of the models that are functioning. So there is a threat from Russia, maybe not only from Russia, maybe also some threats from the Black Sea or even from the south. Who knows? Like, Hungary is behaving somehow in a weird manner. I would like to add to your thoughts. In Poland, they have such an idea that there will be the union that used to be Russia and Germany, the most dangerous for Poland and Ukraine. And they are afraid that after the war, if there will be some kind of peace, Putin will leave, like the military actions will stop, that again, German and Russian union might come back. And they are between Russia and Germany. And we cannot exclude this. Yeah, now Germany made a colossal changes in 1 year, However, coming back, this kind of union, there are countries with human capital, and unfortunately our human capital becomes weaker due to all of these things. And by the way, Poland is one of the countries who are ready to give their army motivated people. If you talk about France and Germany, I doubt seriously that they will give 100,000 right now, as like we have 1 million people who are on war. They won't give us 1 million. Polish people can do that. They have some patriotic opinion, and people from Lithuania can do that, and they are under the direct threat. They can unite. However, there is lack of what Polish people want to get from the USA, like air defense systems, nuclear weapons, and so on. What do we do with that? Will that component be important? And what should Ukraine do? This is very hypothetical. I have my own opinion regarding this. However, some people are talking about returning nuclear status. How will we exist in this new world where nuclear rockets will remain? How do we balance this so that we are not blackmailed by nuclear weapons? Well, I will return to the fact that I'm a writer, a bit, not just political analyst. And somewhere, I guess in 2016, I wrote a book, fiction book. It was named The Weapon of the Last Day. I mean, the nuclear weapon. Weird story, Russia. We had the full-scale war. We had the war since 2014. A group of officers and patriots, Ukrainian patriots, decided again to work on nuclear weapons. They started looking for it, and as it turned out that, Ukrainians stole plutonium somewhere, and they were hiding that just in case, just like always, it's in our mentality just to have that in stock, so to say. And they started making nuclear weapons out of it in order to have the nuclear weapon, and to threat, just like Israel, to threat Russia in case of some scenario like this, of that they would like to capture Ukraine. That was my emotional and romantic point of view to the events, which is not in line, because we are talking about really like high rational things. In rational sense, I see such a scenario. Polish people are fighting with all their forces. We don't know whether the new government will do that. However, the government, they ask question to Americans so that nuclear sharing program can be expanded to Poland. This program, I would like to remind you, covers 5 countries. These are England, Netherlands, and Turkey, like nominal, Italy, and one more country. I don't remember, Germany or something like that. There's nuclear weapon of the USA. It is kept under full control of Americans. However, in case of war, these armies of the countries where the weapons are kept, they have the right to use it. It's very interesting. And Polish people, they demand that this regime is extended, and they are given nuclear weapons, and they have F-35 that can carry nuclear weapons and so on. They have everything ready, and they are insisting on that. I don't know how that will end. Meanwhile, Americans are not doing that. However, if such regime would have come to Poland, I prefer not, discussions in Malta. Like, in my opinion, I will not assess that, let them talk. However, we cannot turn external policy to PR campaign, to PR. No. Like, in GD, Malta, China didn't come. What advisors can solve? Nothing. First. Second, in my opinion, to have the priority number one, European Union, that's nonsense when we are in times of war. In my opinion, priority number one is NATO. And at least, as far as I understand from the speech of Biden when he put Israel and Ukraine on one scale, I've understood that, as a matter of fact, he recognized Ukraine as major non-NATO alliance, so the same status as Israel has. This is my hypothesis, just a hypothesis. Now there's discussion, we won't go into it. No, we won't. I would just like to mention that I was promoting this issue. It actually came to the surface in 2014 and the times of President Poroshenko. I know who advised that to us from the Americans, and I was doing that as an advisor from the very beginning. So I would tell you the result. Americans didn't want to do that because European partners were looking. This is a substitute of NATO membership. This is what they explained. So actually, they didn't want to give us bigger access to weapons. Now we receive already much more than the status. Because the Brazil, for example, that received the status recently, they don't have the same access as we do to American weapons. So MNNA, it's the path that we've gone through already. But what we need is the agreement, defense agreement with the USA. Yeah, I studied defense agreement between the USA and Norway. I was amazed, but how detailed is the description of everything, the stockpiles of American weapons, where they have some extra aerodromes and everything, and this would be incredibly important for us. I mean, the agreement, and indeed, I'm really pleased that I heard from you such good news, and please, God, let it happen. I would like to continue about nuclear weapons. Number one, our partner is the USA, course to NATO, now number one. That is national priority. And then already we can also talk about nuclear sharing in Ukraine. However, of course, this will cause some hysterics in Moscow mud. I think that we should be in some powerful alliance because otherwise we won't be able to withstand the nearest 10 years. And then we will see. And second, I started, however, I didn't develop the idea. Where have you seen the concept of Ukraine in the future? Where? Who? Maybe the president has said at least a single time about that. He has no idea about it. Well, actually, the strategy of national safety is written from the beginning of war. Not many people have viewed that because they would have been surprised because a lot of things changed, first of all. Secondly, people whom they were calling strategic partners, best strategic partners, they were not acting this way, and some were acting differently. And yesterday there was voting on Assembly General, and there was question very popular again in about the plans regarding Cuba. And most countries voted for canceling Ukraine, Israel, and the USA. So Ukraine just didn't give the answer. However, we can see that this situation, we have to consider that globally, that there is the acts of evil or a group of countries that want to destroy the world as it exists today and to get some dividends. And Russia, Northern Korea, China is perceived as those who are China is beneficiary of all of that. Let us speak honestly. China is beneficiary, and actually, I'm scared by China's position. They want to be leader of the next dozen of years. They are demonstrating that they don't care. Who are there? Talibs, terrorists, and just recently we saw how those were destroying the memorials of architecture, how were treating women as nothing. So that is in China and everywhere. So China is demonstrating same model as Putin does. So if China is a barbarian Russia of the larger scale, then it will be a huge challenge for the world. However, we are in the times of war. We can talk about these things in advance. However, at the end of our discussion, we are coming back to strategy. Strategy. What is written in the documents is one thing. Very often, the resources are not planned for that. You are asking how to do this plan. Very simple. There was an article about the considerations in the cabinet of the president and nearby his assistants. Political discussion. These are the realities. So there was also the Economist article that came military elite of Ukraine. We know that it was not Zaluzhny who sat and wrote that, right? We know that what we need for the victory. And if we have such a plan in the energy sector, and not what we see, they are scaring us, we will have blackouts, or they are saying that we are ready. They can't explain how that will happen 3 months in advance. If they say the development of our middle businesses, medium businesses, small businesses, ecology direction, if you combine all of that, here's the realistic development plan of the country. However, I would like to ask you a question. At the end of our discussion, I truly hope that it's not the last discussion of ours, and I truly hope that we will be able to discuss that not a single time, but many times. But very often, such periods of wars, because no matter what kind of war is that, it's a large scale for Ukraine, it's very complicated, and it took lives, even though we are trying to hide the numbers. However, we are talking about dozens of thousands of people. At least with Mr. Zaluzhny said the real numbers, 150,000 of Russians who died. We lose less, fortunately, because we are defending and they are just throwing their personnel. So after the wars, very often the society is lost. When going out of the situation, what might be in this strategy some kind of unifying pointer for Ukraine? What might be the idea that people would aim to get, and they will cope with the difficulties that they will have for sure, but they would like to achieve that? You mentioned European Union earlier on. Euro integration was uniting a lot of people, but now we see that it's much more than European integration, because we are putting the resources to now achievements, negotiation processes, and we don't put a lot of efforts into some post-military time regarding safety. So what might, now I'm speaking about my vision, I would like it to be the safety issue. However, how do you think Ukrainians, no matter from their nationality, language, whatever, what can give them some things to take into account in the hard post-war period? Well, of course, absolute full separation, harsh separation from the Russian world. They are our enemies. For 350 years, they remain. They showed their animal face, and they will remain in the future just the same. I spent a lot of time in Russia, and I've never been a Russophobe. However, I've seen those people who are hating and they are envying Ukrainians because Ukrainians live better. So the first thing, we have to get this kind of separation, and all of the so-called elite, all these Russian and Finnish and pro-Russian views and all these things have to be stopped. I am sure that we need military regime, at least for 2 years, not the military dictatorship, however, the regime that will help us to figure everything out. Just like right now? No, not really. You want it to be more harsh? No, it's not about being harsh. The thing is in goals. If yesterday we open, the new stage of war has started, let us agree about that, because the article of Mr. Zaluzhny put a full stop, the period of discussions and declamations in the style of the Quartal 95. Yeah, they were acting very positively. They were impacting those who were helping. However, when they went to Washington, we see that this period came to an end when people were trusting the person was speaking sincerely. Everybody was believing that that's it. We need different rhetorics, other approaches, and we don't have that yet. And we have to have the new approaches mentioned, goals of the war, goals of the victory, and the main thing, what country we will build on that. Now, look here, the path to European Union, if tomorrow the negotiations will start, it might happen. They might happen this year. There's a huge chance, actually. They will last from 5 to 10 years. Well, there is no other, Valeriy Alexeyevich says, each diplomatic person who knows all of that, nothing different might happen. And the Prime Minister of Ukraine says 2 years. He has no idea about what European Union is. What about the comment? By the way, the question, so there are words of Prime Minister, there's Vice Prime Minister on European Euro-Atlantic integration. So the Prime Minister says that in 2 years we will go through the path. So we had lots of ministers who were saying different things. It's just the person who's not competent and the person doesn't understand how many documents. Do you know, for example, what a huge role Polish people are giving to Ukraine who will go to European Union? They know that agriculture of Ukraine is 5 times more powerful than the Polish. They are afraid that Polish farmer will be destroyed if Ukraine joins. And already now they are saying they won't be in alliance with us, but they can give us advice and they can say, what's that? I saw what European Union did in Poland. We cannot recognize them now. Because for 40, for 50 years, I know that country, and it's impossible to learn that till the end, However, we have to think about European Union, which is in the further perspective. And if we would have been working fully and we wouldn't have been working in these parts, then we would have had some prospects in Washington, and that's very important for us. And all the things that you mentioned, first of all, is to rebuild the country, and rebuilding the country is impossible without investments. And it's impossible in the climate where they are stealing, and the American or Canadian businessman comes and people steal money from him and he just leaves, and all the time he had practiced when being the ambassador. When finally this will come to an end? Tell me, please. So, I opened the documents of the times when the committee was there, just like the things that we have today. Why the White House has to give us the list of our reforms. And they used to do the same 30 years ago. They gave us the list of reforms. It was given to Kuchma. How long can it last? My hopes are just for the new young Euro generation of Euro Ukrainians who already understand that it's impossible to choose populists or to choose these and those people, and finally they will make the right choice and they will create normal society, European. I don't say that we become European straight away. It's not easy. However, I say that we have to consciously choose this path. So I think that, otherwise, we will be destroyed by our competitors. And there's crazy competition. By the way, what is the specialization of Ukraine if we take the world scale? Do we have specialization? Agrarian country, IT sector, agrarian. Nigeria is also agrarian country. Well, specialization is determined, is in terms of reconstruction. And there is a small detail. The documents that I see, not the documents, but the drafts where they're going to allocate money. I'm surprised they want to return us with some moments. There's attention to green technologies, to green energy, IT sector, but they want to return us to chemical industry, to metal processing industry, partially with some things that they can give us, but not the best, of course. There's huge discussion about rockets right now, whether they can give their technologies for us, and as a result, we can get reconstruction of the country that we used to have before war, with certain limitations. And as a result, it turns out that we have a very paradoxical situation under the crisis, including in Ukraine. The crisis is like China, they know crisis hierarchy for a long time. So crisis, the whole metallurgic part of Ukraine was destroyed. So here we again build the steel plants or chemical plants, or we can find new specialization. But what do you see? I see colossal amount of the metals in the soil. They are deficits. We have a huge amount of minerals. And it's not me who will look for that. We also have silicon, a lot of silicon in Ukraine. I'm not against development of the agriculture. It's very important to feed your own citizens and half of the world. This is very important, but we cannot be just agrarian country who is trying to raise. And it cannot be Akhmetov's country, when we have these outdated, you can't imagine how all of those entrepreneurs look like. I saw all the enterprises on Donbass. That's a horrible thing. In those plants where they are back in 1990s. So again, we have to rebuild all of that. By the way, those are scary prospects. We ourselves have to say our conditions, what we want to have, and not we are going to listen to what they give us. Well, as of now, it's not possible. However, the Akhmetov's country, if we are talking about his business, then this is DTAC who is providing us with electricity right now in Skyam. So this is a big step forward in these campaigns. However, I won't say about metal industry or metal processing industry. Unfortunately, we won't be able to give all the answers today. Well, that is something that comes after the future. So maybe next discussion we can talk about the post-future. Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, the main questions I asked I understand your opinion, your scenario looks. I know you have 3 more scenarios that are contained in the book, which was not presented yet, Duchy Litera edition, Russia, Eternal Enemy of Ukraine. This is a separate story. Look for the link in the internet. The presentation haven't happened yet. As soon as it happens, you can take a look. We will make the video and you will see. Here there are 4 scenarios, so we will not talk about the others. However, you mentioned the one that you consider to be realistic. This doesn't scare me up because somehow it's corresponding to my position. I don't think that it's the third world war. However, the fact that the regional conflict we will see in the nearest years, I agree. And we don't know where is this third spot that might come up. As of now, it's Europe, Ukraine, and Near East. Putin really wants that. And they know that in the USA there are 2 directions, 2 regional directions. And the third one, they won't cope with that. And that's very important and very serious. So they will share chaos, like bring chaos in a lot of countries. So just as humans, we want to avoid those bad things. In the sense, I think that it's impossible to avoid that. We will have regional war. I think that it will be in Southern Asia, not in Europe. I think that in order to avoid the large-scale war, it's possible, however, not through the means of NATO, but by strengthening Ukraine, and then war might be taken to the other region. It won't go anywhere. However, we can still be. It might happen not on our territory, on some other lands, which is also tragic for those people. However, Ukrainian people, I guess, in the global this withstanding, we paid our price so that others can get ready to global conflict. As a matter of fact, what is happening, we give other nations time to get prepared and to stand in this World War III. And we are just keeping this stage. I personally believe that we can avoid this global war maybe we can avoid somehow this war on land. So we have to avoid that. And as for the war in cyberspace and in space, marine fights and so on, we cannot avoid that. Thank you very much. There's a lot of questions, obviously, about Near East, Southern Asia, the USA. However, in this format, it's impossible to cover all of that. I'm very happy that you managed to share your thoughts with us. And I would like to mention one more time, I'm very attentively listening to the scenarios that you are mentioning, because the previous scenarios of that person actually, unfortunately, come true. Unfortunately. However, if we are warned about such events, and you can cover that even with your intuition, and your wiseness, then we can think of what Ukraine can do in these situations, and we can think about our victory and at the same time about post-war time. Thank you very much for your questions, for the opportunity to talk on a very high level, not on the level of not a factographical level that on the television, they are asking me something, I'm just answering, and no fantasies, nothing. But here, we managed to talk. It was a very serious discussion, in my opinion, and some part of my fantasies I will mention. As soon as we have the presentation, I give you my word that I won't speak as much as here, because here I was answering the questions. However, there are still some thoughts I would like to share. However, that will be at 5. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you, Yuriy Mikhailовich. Good luck, good health to you. And please, we will be very attentively following the topics, and even we will be following your comments in the media, but more about your considerations, because it's very important for us to see at least the nearest perspective. Thank you for your attention to those who are listening us right now in the press center and those who are watching us from abroad. Thank you very much. Very good discussion. And indeed, those were geopolitical dialogues.